While the Salkinds would continue to pursue the Superman franchise on television with The Adventures of Superboy, the Salkinds decided to give up on the big screen Adventures of Superman after the lack of success of Supergirl, which wasn't even released by Warner Brothers. Now, Warner Brothers was interested in seeing what they could do with the material in a Superman 4, and the Superman 4 was titled The Quest for Peace and was written by Christopher Reeve himself as a sort of message movie. However, Warner Brothers made a very, very big mistake in handing the material over to Canon Films, best known for their low-budget vigilante movies such as the Death Wish sequels. Canon Films decided to split the budget they were given amongst many other different projects since they were floundering at the time. And as such, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, was never given the chance to even be a competent Superman film. In fact, you look at all the Superman films, and you'll see that Superman 4 is the only one that does not meet the audience's expectations, even on a superficial level. No pun intended. The effects are truly, truly awful, and this is unacceptable from the spawn of this big-budget production. Richard Donner refused to return, so Sidney J. Furie comes in, and although he'd had some successes in the past, he had been working in television recently, and it's obvious he has not put himself out of the television mindset, and it doesn't help that he doesn't have the money to bring himself out of that realm. Christopher Reeve tries his best, but it's obvious that he's disappointed in the way that his script has turned out and the way that it's being handled by Canon Films. That's not even being given a chance. Even so, the story itself has many weaknesses. Gene Hackman also returns. Now that the Salkinds are no longer involved, he felt like he could return. Sadly, as Lex Luthor, he's given nothing of particular interest to do. Margot Kidder also gets a larger role than she did, but she's not playing the love interest this time. Yet another love interest brought in. There's no effort to bring back Annette O'Toole, which is a shame. We don't get that sense that Richard Donner wanted to bring to the Superman films before he was canned, that he eventually did bring to the Lethal Weapon films, the sense of linking continuity and the introduction of new characters in each film. Frankly, the plot with the taking over the Daily Planet is rather dull and unnecessary. The message of the movie does feel a little contrived, forced, and preachy, but it could have worked if it weren't for the truly terrible execution of the story, especially in the presentation of the villain, the clone of Superman, Mark Patton's Nuclear Man, what appears to be an out-of-work pro wrestler. Much of the explanation for Nuclear Man ended up on the cutting room floor, as did much of the plot and characterization, and so you get essentially a shell of a film in addition to having poor effects. The movie also cannot avoid some of the sillier aspects that had come up in the other sequels, although it does try to veer away from that somewhat. However, one particular scene plays out exactly like a Margot Kidder Saturday Night Live skit from around the release of the original Superman, and that's just sad. It too often just tries to mimic the first film, which would become a problem with Superman Returns as well. Overall, there's just really no way to recommend Superman 4. It's a failure on all levels, and it's only entertaining in that sort of Ed Wood way. Attempts to make a Superman 5 were initially underway with Canon, who planned to recycle much of what they didn't place into Superman 4. However, that was quickly stopped. Reeve hoped to develop a new project, but a tragic accident prevented him from being able to reprise the role. The project went into development hell. Warner Brothers was not too excited about the prospect of making a new Superman film, of the complete failure of Superman 4. The success of Tim Burton's Batman films, they once again decided to give it a chance. To John Peters, the producer of the first Batman film. The project went through several incarnations, often based off of the Death of Superman storyline from the early 90s, such as Kevin Smith were involved, and Tim Burton and Nicolas Cage became attached to the project, falling through again and again. Plans for crossover films such as the Batman-Superman movie, complete reboot ideas were quickly coming together and then falling apart just as fast. Hi, I'm film critic A.K.A. Moreno, and this is another MAPSA. It's time to learn what we can learn from Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Now you might say, well, Superman 4 was totally awful and there's really nothing to learn, right? Well, you might be right, now that I think about it. What can we learn? Don't be the daughter of rich corporate mogul and think that you can control everything. Don't commit to promises without thinking that. Don't be John Cryer? I don't know. I think what we can truly learn from Superman 4 is how not to blunder a relationship by not putting any genuine effort into it. Because the relationship between the fans and the Superman franchise was destroyed by that film. So keep in mind, don't let Nuclear Man happen to your relationship.